I'm assuming you watched those videos, but just in case you didn't, I'm going to spend just a few minutes, between 20 to 30, on a couple high points in Chamber of Secrets, in Prisoner of Azkaban, primarily the debriefing between Dumbledore and Harry, or what I call the debriefing. But in a couple of them, I'm going to go back a little bit just before this. So, beginning with Chamber of Secrets, and these are the really high points, so to speak. In the chapter The Heir of Slytherin, when Harry finally meets up with Tom Riddle, a couple questions before that. How does Harry know who Tom Riddle is? He finds the diary. How else? You started to say it. Saw your lips start to form the name.
I know it was Ron mentioned the trophy case and having to polish his trophy.
Ron has detention and has to polish the awards in the trophy case, and polishes one for Tom Riddle, okay? 50 years ago, all right? About the book. What's distinctive about the book? Is it just a book that says by Tom Riddle and he reads it?
It's like alive.
Oh, I haven't thought about it that way. Okay.
Well, not like alive. Okay.
Is it like alive, like Hagrid's, Book of Monsters book alive that will eat you if you're not careful? Oh, I shouldn't have brought up that one because, yeah, it will kind of.
It responds.
It responds, okay? Does the book have... Can you open the book? Can one of us open the book and read it? No, okay? It's like a blank journal, a blank diary. How does Harry discover it's not a blank journal or blank diary?
He goes to write something in it and he accidentally drips ink.
He's writing with a fountain pen, not with a ballpoint pen, okay? Or with an ink quill, essentially. Dips it in the ink pot, holds the pen over, getting ready to do something, and a drop of ink falls and it disappears. Thinks that's strange. He writes something, it disappears, words come back out, okay? What does the diary purport to tell Harry? What does it purport? What does it pretend to be? Let me put it that way. I'm not saying it isn't this by saying pretend. It's Tom Riddle's diary, right? It records his thoughts, his feelings, his emotions, and seemingly what else? His memories. Like they're photographically put in there. So that when does Harry literally read the diary? No. What does he do? He goes into it. So he goes into Tom Riddle's memories. Okay? This is an important little detail because we're going to see Harry go into people's memories in several books. And the question, for me at least, that arises is, how do memories work? So when you try to remember something that happened, say, last week, or 2 weeks ago, or 2 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, how do those memories work? Do you just sit there and think, make your eyes twitch and stuff, and you cue the tape up and then hit play, and it plays? No, that's not how memories work. It is how they work in the book. It's like it's photographic. In some of these other memories we're going to see, there's a problem. I think it's a conceptual problem on Rowling's part. Because we're going to see people who have memories of things that they were not present for. Harry's going to go into one person's memory, and he's going to see people that the person whose memory it is was not with those people at the time. And it's not him seeing the person's memory, it's him seeing what these people over here are doing when this person was never there. Okay, it's a problem. So, Tom Riddle. Harry gets into the Chamber of Secrets. They figure out how and such. All right? I'm going to leave, watch the films. I didn't, not going to talk about Lockhart and such. He sees Ginny. Why does he go into the Chamber of Secrets? To save Ginny. Okay? He sees the shadowy figure, and the shadowy figure gradually gets less shadowy and more corporeal, more real. And they start to talk. And the shadowy figure does what? Has a wand. Whose? Harry's. Because Harry dropped it. Tom Riddle picks it up. And he writes, Lord Voldemort, in the air. Okay? Or I am Lord Voldemort. And then he does what? He does this. Remember when the Chamber of Secrets was not first, back in history, in the novel, was first opened, okay? And then later on, Harry gets taken up to the hospital wing, and McGonagall and Dumbledore come in, and McGonagall asks, how? How was it opened? And Dumbledore says, it's not how, it's who. Well, Rowling is giving us a little foreshadowing there. Why? How? Rearrange. Who? I am Lord Voldemort. Tom Marvolo Riddle. We get Lord Voldemort's real name. So, now, Riddle gets the basilisk to attack. Harry kind of, help me, Obi-Wan, powers that be in the universe, help. Fawkes shows up, all right? The basilisk bites Harry in the arm. Fawkes lands next to him. Riddle comes close and starts to talk to Harry, 320, 321, and says, I'm going to watch you die, Harry Potter. Don't be quick about it. Just take your time. Middle of the page. Harry felt drowsy. Everything around him seemed to be spinning, like water in around a drain. What's the everything around? I think this is a metaphor. It's Harry's life. So ends the famous Harry Potter. Alone in the Chamber of Secrets, forsaken by his friends. Is he? Have they forsaken him? No. This is emblematic of that first chapter when Harry thinks he's been abandoned by Ron, Hermione, Hagrid, etc., because he hasn't gotten Christmas cards or anything like that, which he did, but Dobby, intercepted them. Defeated at last by the Dark Lord he so unwisely challenged. You'll be back with your dear mudblood mother soon, Harry. What does that mean? How's he going to be back with his dear mudblood mother? He's going to die. Okay? What does that statement presume, though? Or what must Voldemort, Tom Riddle, assume about death?
You all go to the same place?
Is it that you all go to the same place? Okay, what's the you in that statement?
He thinks they're both going to the same place.
What's the they in that statement?
Harry and his mom.
But Harry's going to be dead. So what goes to the same place?
Dead people.
So the body's going to go off to where his mother's body is somewhere?
Their souls.
Bingo, that's it, okay? Their souls. Again, that is making an assumption or indicating a belief system. And this is really important for all of the novels, okay? Tom Riddle, surface level, at least is saying, Harry, you're going to get what? You're going to get what you looked for when you looked into the mirror, Harry said. He'll be what? He'll be with his family again. His real family, not the Dursleys. Okay? That's assuming. That suggests Tom Riddle is saying, when you die, the you that you think of as you doesn't just dissipate with the cells of your body. that there is something else that goes on after death. Okay? What does his name mean? To flee from death. I don't think I talked about this at all. This is why I always don't cover as much in this class as I do in my first class, because my brain isn't awake in my first class. In Plato's Dialogues of Socrates, Socrates is getting ready to die. Okay? He's drunk the hemlock. He's been condemned to death for misleading the youth of Athens, teaching them there's not all those pantheons of gods. There's one God who's unlike anything we can understand, etc. And we ought to live the good life, meaning we ought to live virtuous lives and seek the highest good. What's called the summum bonum, right? Plato and his friends, Socrates' other pupils, tried to buy off Socrates' release before he drinks the hemlock. They're like, we've paid the guards, we can sneak you out of Athens. Socrates' opinion is, if I don't live in Athens, I don't want to live. Athens is everything. That was a very common idea. Your city was your soul, so to speak. Okay? So he says, no, I'd rather die. And they're like, what? And Socrates essentially tells them, haven't you learned anything in all the years we spent together? What is it you fear? You fear things you know, right? Is anybody right at this very moment literally afraid somebody's going to run in here, into this room from out there with a submachine gun and kill us all? Or with a Glock, or pick your weapon? Probably not. Why? Because you're here. And you all look relatively calm. If you were afraid that was going to happen, I could almost guarantee none of you would be here. Okay? If I knew that was going to happen, I would not be here. Has nothing to do with courage or bravery. Has, make wise choices kind of a thing. What's the point? If you knew it was going, that is something to fear. But you don't know that's going to happen, so all of you got up this morning and went around your everyday business. Why? Because what you don't know is not something you fear. Socrates' point is, if this door represents death, what do we know is on the other side? What do we know? Bingo. We don't. His point is, why do you fear that which you don't know? Why does Voldemort fear death? Because he does know something. Or, put another way, he believes something is out there. He believes there is something to be feared, for him at least, once he goes through that door. Okay? What did Dumbledore tell Harry at the end of book 1? To the well-organized mind, death is what? But the next great adventure. That is, our lives here, we're all Frodo Baggins. It's a great adventure. Death is what? It's the next great adventure. For whom? Those who have well-organized minds. The kicker is, what does it mean to have a well-organized mind? How do you organize your mind?
I have no idea.
That's what these books are about. That is really what these books are all about. They're about how you organize your mind so that when that comes, not necessarily, I'm assuming your ages for a minute, 50, 60, 70 years from now, but if it comes tomorrow, your what? Your mind is prepared. Harry's mind was at least partially prepared for that first book. How do we know?
You could get the Philosopher's Stone.
Just before that.
He was willing to put himself at risk for it.
Bingo. He repeatedly puts himself at risk, not only for the Philosopher's Stone, but for others. He defends others. He comes to the protection of the weak, etc. He stops Malfoy in the forest when he should go, no, Draco, you go on ahead. You go first. I'll come find you. He's constantly, why is he in the Chamber of Secrets to begin with? To save Ginny. What does that entail? He puts himself at risk. He offers himself, okay, for that. That's why he's, at this point, when Riddle is talking to him, Harry is dying. He is literally, not metaphorically, not figuratively. He is dying, okay? Socrates' point, we shouldn't fear death. Doesn't mean you embrace it. Doesn't mean, hey, so I'm going to swallow a bullet today. Okay? Harry has to learn not to fear death. So, you'll be with your dear mudblood mother soon. In other words, Harry, you ought to thank me. You'll be reunited. She bought you 12 years of borrowed time. What has Voldemort, by the way, learned? Because Harry mentioned it. Harry explained it. You couldn't kill me. Why? Because his mother did this. She stood between Voldemort and Harry. She took the death upon herself. And in that, put a protective spell on Harry that Dumbledore explains at the end of book 1. And it's kind of interesting that at that point in time, the 65-year-old, I think he was 65 at the time, the 65-year-old Tom Riddle did not think when he's getting ready to kill Lily, let's see, if she sacrifices herself for Harry, that'll put a protective spell around him, and I won't be able to kill him. I'll have to do it another way. But the 16-year-old memory of Tom Riddle puts 2 and 2 together very quickly. Okay? Anyways, she bought you 12 years, Harry. But Lord Voldemort got you in the end, as you knew he must. Harry's thinking, if this is dying, thought Harry, it's not so bad. Why? Because his mind is prepared. Now there's another reason, but we get these sentences in sequence. There's time passing. If this is dying, it's not so bad. Then we hear even the pain was leaving him. Why? Because Fawkes is sitting there crying on Harry's wounds, healing them. So while Voldemort is talking, Harry is dying. He is ready. He was ready when he went down there, if that's what it took to save Ginny. But now he's in the process of undying. Again, Phoenix, death, rebirth. Okay? But was this dying? Harry asks, or thinks, etc. We're going to skip a bunch. Go to the debriefing scene. It's the chapter Dobby's Reward. So, Harry gets Ginny out, gets Ron, gets Lockhart up. They go to the staff room where everybody's waiting. Dumbledore figures that Harry needs to talk. He finds a way to get everybody out. You know, because they're all assuming it's all Ginny's fault. And he says, what I want to know is, how did Tom Riddle trick Ginny? You know, so she was duped. She's therefore totally blameless. Right? Ginny has no guilt for what happened. So, he gets everybody out. 3:32. Harry says, Dumbledore says, first of all, I want to thank you. You must have shown me real loyalty down in the chamber. Nothing but that could have called Fawkes to you. What did Dumbledore say about loyalty to him? Anybody remember? Before he has to leave, when Cornelius Fudge and Malfoy come to Hagrid's hut, Dumbledore looks at Harry, hiding under the cloak, and says, I will only truly have left when what? When no one at Hogwarts is loyal to me. Okay? And then Ron says, Hagrid says, follow the spiders and such. All right? Which they don't understand. So you met Tom Riddle. Imagine he was most interested in you. And Harry then says, Riddle said I'm like him. Strange likenesses. And Dumbledore puts on both his teaching cap and his counselor cap. And what do you think, Harry? That question means two things. What do you think, Harry? Are you similar to Voldemort? And it also means, how does that make you feel, Harry? Tell me how you feel. This is what? This is Gandalf telling Frodo, Gollum is a hobbit. How does Frodo take that news? No, can't be. I don't think I'm like him, says Harry, notice, more loudly than he'd intended. Why does he say it more loudly?
He's defensive.
Very. And then he kind of goes, I'm a Gryffindor. Shoulder slump, head goes down. The Sorting Hat told me I'd have done well in Slytherin. Everyone thought I was Slytherin's heir for a while because I can speak Parseltongue. What is Harry building to? I should be in Slytherin because I can speak Parseltongue. Dumbledore, you can speak Parseltongue, Harry. This is a very, very important passage. Because Lord Voldemort, who is the last remaining, the next word in my printed edition reads ancestor. Because Lord Voldemort is the last remaining ancestor of Salazar Slytherin. What word should it be?
Heir.
Well, okay, maybe. Descendant. Descendant, one who comes from. Ancestor is one who comes before. Really bad editing. Really bad editing. They should have got that. I think probably in your editions, if you got a more recent one, I think it has been corrected. This one's like from early 2000s. So, he goes on. You can speak Parseltongue because Voldemort could speak Parseltongue. Unless I'm much mistaken, he transferred some of his own powers to you the night he gave you that scar. Not something he intended to do. And then we get, I think this is the first time. He might have done it in the first book, but I don't think so. The first time Harry hears somebody say something, he processes it internally, and he rephrases it. He interprets it in words Harry can understand. So, Dumbledore said, Voldemort transferred some of his own powers to you the night he gave you that scar. That's like he walked up to you and did this. Transferred. Harry hears that. Here's how Harry understands it. Voldemort put a bit of himself in me? Those are two very different things. They are related, but they are very different. Notice, Dumbledore does not correct him. Why? Because this is, however old Dumbledore is, and at one point, if I remember right, he's over 100. Okay? And how old's Harry in this book? 12. Difference between a plus 100-year-old level of understanding and a 12-year-old. He just takes that to mean he puts something of himself in me. Dumbledore, yeah. So I should be in Slytherin. If I've got a bit of Satan in me, then I belong in hell, kind of the Sorting Hat could see Slytherin's power in me. And Dumbledore doesn't allow him to finish the thought. And I think we're going to see this a couple times. Here, we're going to see it again in Azkaban. Dumbledore doesn't let Harry finish the statement. I think because he's trying to cut off the thought and erase it from Harry's mind. He doesn't want him to go down that trail. He doesn't want to allow him to reach a conclusion that Dumbledore thinks will not be good for Harry to reach. Okay? And it put you in Gryffindor. Yes, Sorting Hat might have seen some of those powers, so to speak, in you. And it put you in Gryffindor. It put you in Gryffindor, Harry. You know why that was? Think. But before he says that, he says, you've got some of the qualities that Slytherin had, or that Slytherin valued. What are those qualities? Parcel tongue. What else? Resourcefulness.
Ambition.
It's not one of the ones that he mentions, but a thirst to prove yourself is ambition. Resourcefulness, determination, certain disregard for rules. Why are you in Gryffindor, Harry? Because I didn't want to go in Slytherin? Bingo. Because what does it really mean? He says, exactly, Harry, which makes you very different from Tom Riddle. Let me go back. Exactly, said Dumbledore, beaming once more. What does that mean, beaming? Good boy, Harry. Good boy. Wag your tail. Here's a treat. Good answer. He's teaching. He's giving praise. Visually giving praise. Okay? Which makes you very different from Tom Riddle. Makes him very different from Draco Malfoy. And probably all the other Slytherins who what? Want to be in Slytherin. And he gives us the money quote. Each book has a money quote. It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. Go back to the end of book 1. What 2 choices did Neville make that show what he truly is? Because his abilities show us what? He doesn't belong at Hogwarts, period. He stands up to his friends, not once, twice. He stands up for what is right, twice. Okay? And both times suffers for it. And yet, because of that, especially the second time, he gets awarded points. And his house wins the house cup because of Neville. Ultimately because of Neville. Okay? It's our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are far more than our abilities. And we could jump from here, literally, we could go straight from here to the end of Goblet of Fire and talk about the end. And Dumbledore's comments to Cornelius Fudge about a couple of characters who I won't name now in case you haven't finished it. Okay? So, they continue talking. Dumbledore says, because Harry sat motionless in his chair, stunned. He wasn't literally stunned. But what does that mean? He can't believe it. So Dumbledore has to do what? He has to give him proof of what he's saying. And we're told Dumbledore reaches across to McGonagall's desk, picks up the blood-stained silver sword, and hands it to Harry. The sword that what? Came out of the hat. Who did the hat belong to? Godric Gryffindor. 1,000 years ago, when they started the school, Godric Gryffindor pulls the hat off his head and he puts a bit of the brains of each 4 founders in it. Why? So that the hat knows how to choose where students should go. And out of the hat comes the sword, and the sword has inscribed on it, Godric Gryffindor. Only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that out of the hat, Harry. What does he mean?
You have to be like Godric Gryffindor to get his sword.
Okay, could be that. That is somebody who really belongs in the Gryffindor house. Could be that. Probably definitely is that. Does it mean anything else? What else can a true Gryffindor mean? Blood. A real Gryffindor. A real descendant of Godric Gryffindor.
Because Harry, the Potter family comes from Godric's Hollow, which is where Godric Gryffindor was.
Yeah, don't go too far.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. They grew up, the Potters came from Godric's Hollow, which is the town that Godric Gryffindor lived in. Okay? It's clear. By the time we get through all the books, I'm just going to give this away. Harry is a descendant of Godric Gryffindor. Godric Gryffindor. Reach means like the word Reich in German, kingdom, power, God's kingdom is what that means. Gryffindor, okay? He's saying, just as what? Voldemort is the last surviving descendant of Salazar Slytherin, Harry, he's the last of the Potters. I think it's safe to assume he's the last surviving true Gryffindor. Okay? So, finished that. Prisoner of Azkaban. Skip, obviously a lot, unless you watch the videos. I want to pick up in the chapter Servant of Lord Voldemort, chapter 19. So, they've gone through the Whomping Willow. They've come up through into the Shrieking Shack. Harry, Ron, and Hermione there. Ron's on the bed. His leg is broken. He's got his rat, Scabbers. Sirius Black is there. Lupin shows up. Snape shows up. Harry, Ron, and Hermione curse Snape. All hell's going to break loose because of that. And now we have Sirius Black and Lupin, and they force Ron's rat to do something. Because it's not a rat. It's an animagus. Just like they are animagi. Who are the four animagi?
James Potter, Sirius Black. Well, Remus isn't really, but.
True, he's not.
And then Peter Pettigrew.
And then Peter Pettigrew. James turns into a stag. Prongs is his nickname. Sirius turns into a dog. Okay. Padfoot. Lupin turns into a werewolf, Moony. And Peter turns into a rat, Wormtail. Because rats' tails. Okay. 374. So they've forced Scabbers to take his rightful form. How long has Ron had Scabbers?
He said he's been in his family for like generations.
He belonged to Percy before him, which is kind of interesting when you think about it once we finish all the novels. He's been there for like 12 years. They've had him for a long time. Rats don't live that long. Okay? So they force him to transform, and he kind of appeals to Harry for mercy and stuff. Page 374. Sirius says, "You sold Lily and James to Voldemort. Do you deny it?" Peter bursts into tears. Sirius, what could I have done? The Dark Lord, you have no idea. He has weapons you can't imagine. I was scared, Sirius. I was never brave like you and Remus and James. I never meant it to happen. He who may not be named found me. In other words, I was forced to do this. I had no free will. Okay? What would be, assume for the sake of argument for the moment, what would be one reason he might not have had any free will? A spell. The Imperious Charm, we're going to find out, okay, in the next book, where you lose your freedom to choose. Actually, it's where you lose yourself. Yourself gets buried, and somebody else takes control of you. So, Remus, don't lie. You've been passing information to him for a year before Lily and James died. A year before Lily and James died means when? Right after Harry was born. Because Lily and James died when Harry was 1 year and 3 months old. Yeah, 1 year and 3 months. Exactly. He was taking over everywhere, says Pettigrew. What was there to be gained by refusing him? Notice what that question really means. We wouldn't use that language today. We would say, what's in it for me? What was in it for me to refuse? Innocent lives, Peter, is Sirius's response. We don't know yet. Well, we kind of do. Who those innocent lives are. We do know 13 innocent people died when Sirius Black used a spell against them, right? It wasn't Sirius Black. it was Peter Pettigrew. Those people were innocent. When we get to book 5, we're going to see a photograph of a whole bunch of innocent people who are dead, including James and Lily. Okay? And then when we get to book 6, we're going to start seeing people. Book 5, we're going to see some die. In book 6 and book 7, they're going to start piling up like, bodies on a battlefield. Pettigrew, you don't understand. He would have killed me, Sirius. Then you should have died. Died rather than betray your friends. That's not the most important part of what Sirius says, though. It's the last clause that's the most important part. As we would have done for you. It's the for you part. You should have died, Peter, for what? For James and Lily. What does that for mean? Instead of. On behalf of. Like Lily in front of Harry's crib or cradle or whatever he was in. You should have sacrificed yourself, he's saying. For what? Innocent lives. As we would have done. Sirius is telling us this now, after spending 12 years in Azkaban. Peter, I would have died for you. Lupin would have died for you. James and Lily would have died for you. I mean, these 4 were supposed to be what? Best friends. By the way, they are a parallel to, kind of at least, the original 4 founders of Hogwarts. Okay? Even though they're not in, Slytherin or Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw. So, Harry then stops Lupin and Sirius from killing Peter. Why? Because he reckons his father wouldn't have wanted them to become murderers on his account. So, go on to Outpost, chapter 22. Couple more minutes. Page 425. Dumbledore's talking with Harry. It's his debriefing again. Why so miserable, Harry? You should be proud of yourself after last night. It didn't make any difference. Pettigrew got away. What is he thinking would have made a difference? For Peter Pettigrew to have his soul sucked out by a Dementor. Okay? Dumbledore. Didn't make any difference. It made all the difference in the world. Harry, you helped uncover the truth. What? You saved an innocent man, innocent lives, from a terrible fate. What innocent man? What terrible fate?
Sirius when the Dementors kiss, and then also Bucky.
Yeah, but he's not an innocent man. But yeah, I get your drift. What would Snape have preferred? Guilty, innocent, who cares? Suck that sucker out, Okay? Why? He was bullied by them. I mean, he just hates.
He stole his girl.
Well, Sirius didn't.
Well, yeah,
Well,
but
but
he helped.
he was in.
Yeah, let's not go too far there yet. So, Harry mentions Professor Trelawney going all weird. What's Trelawney's subject? Divination. What do the other teachers think about Trelawney and her subject?
They think it's dumb. They don't think it's real.
It's dumb. It's not real. It's she's a charlatan, etc. Okay. Of all the branches of magic that are taught at Hogwarts, Can we find any examples of them here in our real world? Can you go to a store and buy an arithmancy textbook, The Magic of Numbers? Numerology is kind of close, but not really. Can you go buy potions? If you can, it's only because you can get them at one place. Can you buy stuff for transfiguration? Can you go buy a wand? Yes, you can go buy a wand, but nobody's going to say it's going to do anything. Okay? There is one. It's this. You can have your palm read in Murfreesboro. You can have your horoscope read. You can look in a crystal ball. You can have tea leaves read. You can do various other kinds of fortune telling, tarot cards, all that kind of stuff. Has very real world examples of it. Kind of interesting that of the one branch of magic that has a real world parallel, Rowling portrays it as utter nonsense in this world.
There's also astronomy that they teach there too, which I guess, but it's like different than.
It's not the same as our astronomy, it's more astrology. Okay? It's the reading of the stars and the planets and their influence on us in our lives. It's not to try to figure out, why is there that big red spot in Jupiter? What does it mean? That's what it is. It's more, what does it mean for us? Is it angry? That kind of thing. So, Dumbledore says, Harry, she might be right. What was the prophecy? Servant of the Dark Lord will be unchained. He's been bound for 12 years. He will arise. He'll go back. The Dark Lord will arise again. And then and it plays again. So Dumbledore says, I ought to give her a raise. She said, 2 correct predictions. How long has she been there? We don't know yet. We'll find out later. So, Harry says, I stopped Sirius and Professor Lupin from killing Pettigrew. That makes it my fault. If she comes back. If Voldemort comes back. It does not. Dumbledore says. Why? The consequences of our actions are always so complicated, so diverse, that predicting the future is a very difficult business indeed. Professor Trelawney, bless her, it's like he's gone all Southern, bless her heart, is living proof of that. You did a very noble thing in saving Pettigrew's life. Remember what the centaurs talked about? You've read the signs, you've seen, and what does Firenze tell Harry? They've been misread before. Okay? What's Dumbledore's point? Is it that the stars are being misread? How do you predict someone's actions? How do you predict your own actions? How do you know what you're going to do 5 minutes from now? Whether you're going to wipe your nose, do something with your hair, look down, look to the right. You don't. Every one of those actions, when you do one thing, like my turning this way and doing this, what? It wipes out all the other possibilities of my doing this thing. Just let that sink in for a while, because that time is now past. I had no idea that I was going to do this thing, because I didn't do this in the first class. Dumbledore's point is what? We don't know what those actions are going to be, partly because of our quote-unquote free will. He says, you did a noble thing in saving Pettigrew's life. But if it helps Voldemort back, what is Harry assuming? I saved Peter Pettigrew's life. Peter Pettigrew goes back to Voldemort. Voldemort comes back to power. It is my fault. What is he removing from Peter Pettigrew? Free will, volition, agency. It's like all this other stuff, it's set into stone. Did Harry know he was going to save Peter Pettigrew's life? No. Pettigrew owes his life to you. You have sent Voldemort a deputy who is in your debt. When one wizard saves another wizard's life, It creates a certain bond between them. And I'm much mistaken if Voldemort wants his servant in the death of Harry Potter. That is, I don't think Voldemort's going to want somebody loyal to him who owes you something. Because what problem always arises when you owe someone something? It's got to be repaid. I don't want a connection with Pettigrew. What did that owing someone something do, first book, that saved Harry's life? That gets explained in this one, by the way. Who owed someone something, first book, because of an action done in the past? Owed.
James.
Why?
Because James saved his life.
Because Sirius said, you want to know where Lupin goes every month? Go to the Whomping Willow. And what would the Whomping Willow have done? It would have whomped him. Yeah. Okay? James stopped him. James did what? He saved Snape's life. Snape hated him for that. And other reasons, but that was a big one. He was now what? He was in debt to, not James, because he's dead, James's son. I don't want a connection with Pettigrew. This is magic at its deepest. It's most impenetrable, Harry, but trust me, the time may come when you will be very glad you saved Gollum's life. Intentionally did that, slip that name in there. Why? It's the exact same situation. Okay? Pity and mercy kept Bilbo from killing Gollum. Pity and mercy kept James from allowing Snape to be killed. Harry hasn't made this connection. He doesn't make this connection that he's still alive because Snape saved his life, because his father saved Snape's life. He doesn't connect all of this until we get almost to the end. Well, it is until we get to the end of book 7. Why? Because he has to learn all this. This is all part of the organizing of his mind. All these disjumbled blocks, like a Rubik's Cube, have got to be put into place so that he can die properly. Okay? Give away something there. So, then Harry says, I thought it was my dad who conjured the Patronus, etc. Then Dumbledore uses, and this, I wish Rowling hadn't done this. Dumbledore uses the straight thing. Oh, Harry, your father's alive in you. That's why you created this Patronus and such. How does Harry create the Patronus?
A spell.
The spell? Expecto Patronum, right? What do you have to have in your mind when you do the spell? A happy memory, okay? What's Harry's happy memory? I asked that question and my mind literally just went blank as a board. Going to Hogwarts, leaving the Dursleys for the first time, having friends.
Oh, he was gonna live with Severus.
He's going to live with, Sirius was his godfather. He's going to go live with his godfather, okay? Expecto Patronum, right? I expect, the O on the end indicates agency. It's first person singular. I do this, so I expect what? A Patronus. What's a Patronus? Or patron. A guardian. A protector. A deliverer. A savior. One point or another, I think Harry's called almost every one of these words. He is called savior in a later book. All right? Where does it come from? Out of the wand? No. Expecto. X out of pect. Chest. Okay? It comes from within. It doesn't come from somewhere out there. It doesn't come from your wand. It's channeled through the wand. Okay? It's indicating something about what is inside, which is why Dumbledore said at the end of the first book, it is our choices, Harry, that do what? Show what we truly are. Why is Harry's Patronus a stag? Is it because his father's was a stag? No. has to do with wands. What is Voldemort's wand? You and Phoenix. What is Harry's wand? Holly and Phoenix. Holly and Phoenix, both symbolic of death and resurrection. Voldemort's symbolic of death, not dying, but killing. Harry's Patronus is a stag, the only animal that can eat a ewe and live. Okay? Now, Goblet of Fire. Since we need to go on, since we only have 35 minutes left. First three books begin where? Number 4, Privet Drive. All three of them. This one begins where? The Riddle House, Little Hangleton. We don't know where Little Hangleton is. That is what county it is. These are all in Surrey. These are southeast of London. Okay? Why does she begin this one differently?
Like a tone shift?
Well, there's definitely a tone shift. I think because she doesn't want to be accused of writing what's called formulaic fiction. That is, that they follow a formula. If you want to be a writer, an easy way to be a writer is to write romance novels, like Harlequin romance. They're all about the same number of pages, 125, 150. They've got the hunky guy, the heaving breast on the cover and such. And the writers of those follow what is called a tip sheet. That is, these are tips. They have to have a certain number of words. They have to have a certain number of characters. The characters must meet certain characteristics, appearance-wise, all that kind of stuff. The plot can't be too complicated, blah, 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 blah. You follow that and you just write one thing after another. You read one romance novel, you've read them all. Kind of, if you've read one mystery novel, you've read them all because they're all what? Whodunits. Read one Agatha Christie. Okay, the plots change a little bit, but they're all essentially the same. Read, an Hercule Poirot, one of her great characters. He always solves the crime. Why? That's what he does. You don't go see a Superman movie to see Superman get killed. Why? Because he's Superman. Not supposed to happen. She does what? She breaks the formula. People are expecting number 4, Privet Drive. And instead, what do we see? We literally see, first chapter, a murder. Not a death, a murder. We see a frail old man, a World War II warrior, get killed by, what do you describe sitting in that armchair? It's not a snake. It's not Nagini.
Oh, a little crusty thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a what?
A little crusty thing.
A little crusty thing.
Mutant baby.
Mutant baby. Notice, it can't be described. But it's not what was attached to the back of Quirrell's head. It now has what? That it didn't have then.
A body.
It has its own kind of body. Okay? Interestingly, I don't think I've ever said this before. It's the same kind of thing we're going to see once in book 7. Yep. Okay. We're going to get to a chapter in book 7. Harry's going to have this experience, and this thing is going to be there. Okay. So, the Riddle House. We see after a bit, pages 8 and 9, Wormtail talking with Voldemort. Okay? And Voldemort, or Wormtail, whichever, Wormtail suggests to Voldemort that they can do their whatever plot there is without Harry Potter. It can be done without Harry Potter, my lord, bottom of page 8. He says, I see. I don't say this out of concern for the boy, but any wizard will serve. The thing can be done he says, what? More quickly. We don't know what the thing is. Not until we get almost to the end of the novel. Excuse me. He says, I could leave for a short while, I could disguise myself, and I could go get us a wizard. You're true. It's true. It makes sense. Page 9. About a quarter of the way down. Laying hands on Harry Potter would be so difficult. He is so well protected. What language would we normally use to describe what he means by laying hands on Harry Potter?
Getting a hold of him.
Getting a hold of him. Kidnapping him. It's briefer. Laying hands on means kidnapping. Okay? So why does he say laying hands on? You're going to think I'm grasping at straws. I don't think I am because of language that's used in later books. Laying hands on has religious connotations. Okay? In the New Testament, it's what's done to heal people. Churches today still practice it. You lay hands on someone, you channel the Holy Spirit, and you heal the person. That is, it's religious terminology. We're going to see in Book 6, Voldemort and his followers are having a meeting, essentially. And we're going to hear Voldemort say, I think it's Voldemort. Yeah, it's Voldemort. Say, until so-and-so is converted. And he means changes belief to me. Like religious conversion. So Rowling kind of starts using that language here. We're going to see more of it. It never becomes out and out overt, you get converted to the dark, even though Harry said, I'm never going over to the dark side. That's same idea, okay? It's just interesting that he uses that laying hands on at this point. So, they keep talking. Voldemort doesn't trust Wormtail, says, I have my reasons for using the boy, as I've already explained to you, but not to us. We don't know what those reasons are. And he says, all I have to do is wait until my faithful servant returns. Well, who did we think that faithful servant was at the end of book 3? Wormtail. Has he been chained up? Has he been bound for 12 years? Not literally. He has been bound in the shape of a rat. Does he ever go away from Ron and take his human form and go, expand, not as far as we know. So, Wormtail, I'm a faithful servant. I need somebody with brains, essentially, okay? So, we see we see Voldemort kill Frank Bryce, and Harry wakes up, and his scar's hurting. Was it all a dream? Harry did have a dream of what we just saw, or at least part of it. And what does he immediately think he should do? My scar hurts. I should ask somebody what to do about that. So he thinks, Hermione, what would Hermione say? Go to the library, find a book. What would Ron say? That's cool, but not really be much help. He thinks Dumbledore, doesn't want to get Dumbledore very much involved. Who does he finally decide to appeal to? Sirius. He has a new godfather. He has an old godfather, but new to him. Okay? And he thinks Sirius will understand. So he writes Sirius a letter, 24 and 25. And notice what it tells us. Thanks for your last letter. They've been corresponding. What do the Dursleys now know about Harry?
That he has his godfather as a convicted criminal.
Convicted criminal. That sounds bland.
Because at the end of the 3rd book, he tells him this is if you're mean to me, my godfather will show up, and he's
A mass murderer.
Thank you. How did the third book begin? Vernon's watching the news, right? Reading the newspaper, and then later watching the news. And we find out that Sirius Black has escaped. And he's a mass murderer. He's killed 13 people. Okay? And now they know that this guy is Harry's godfather. So it's like, don't touch him. And so Harry gets treated much more nicely. He's still neglected, but, you know. So, he writes Sirius a letter. Chapter 3, Harry gets invited to the Quidditch World Cup. Chapter 4, the Weasleys, Mr. Weasley, Ron, Fred, and George show up to bring Harry. How do they show up? Do they show up in the flying forward Anglia like in book 2? No. They use flu powder. Only one of the Dursleys done. This has happened in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of homes in England since they've done away with burning coal for heat. Patch up the fireplace, close it up, so it's just a wall. Well, they go to flu powder and they end up inside the wall, and Vernon blows a hole in it. So now there's plaster and dust all over. Okay? They get Harry. Fred and George leave. They throw something behind them. Not going to talk about it much. Ron leaves. Page 48. Harry's turn. Harry says, bye then. And he walks towards the hearth, and just before he steps in, Mr. Weasley stops him. Because the Dursleys don't say anything. Harry said goodbye to you. Didn't you hear him? Arthur says. Harry, it doesn't matter. Honestly, I don't care. Why does Arthur stop Harry? And 2, why does he ask? Harry said goodbye. Didn't you hear him? What is Arthur showing us there?
That he doesn't understand why they wouldn't say bye to their family member.
Okay, 98% there. What should they do?
They should say bye and hug him and tell him that they love him, but they don't say anything.
Okay, I'm going to yes to the first statement. The other two might be a bit extreme for the Dursleys. I don't know that the Dursleys are capable of saying, I love you, other than in a mirror, maybe. Okay? He's trying to teach them manners. He's trying to teach them, as a student in my first class said, common courtesy. Someone says goodbye, you reciprocate. You say goodbye too. You don't say F you. You don't give them the middle finger salute, etc. Notice, Harry, it doesn't matter. Honestly, I don't care. Why does Harry say that? Because they're both true. It doesn't matter, and it hasn't mattered for 12 years for Harry. Actually, now, 11, 12, 13, 14 years. Almost. He hasn't gotten any love from them. Okay? Mr. Weasley still doesn't let Harry go. You're not going to see your nephew till next summer. Surely you're going to say goodbye. Now that can be read as, surely you're going to say goodbye. Or it can mean, surely you're going to say goodbye. Because look how Vernon reads it. Vernon notices one hand on Harry and another hand holding a wand. That's like, surely you're going to say goodbye. How do we know that's how Vernon reads it? The idea of being taught consideration by a man who just blasted away half his living room wall seemed to be causing him intense suffering. Who the hell are you to teach me right and proper behavior when you blow up my house? I mean, he's got a point. You got to admit it, okay? This is the first time Rowling does something like this. With an adult to another adult, right? And I think there's a reason for that. But also an adult with a quote unquote child, adolescent around. And I think there's a reason for that. By this point, Rowling knows who her, not like she did in the first one, she knows exactly who her readers are. That is, she knows some of the people who will be reading this book started reading these when the first book came out. This book comes out in 2000. And some of them were 10, 11, 12 years old. So they're getting to be Harry's age. She also knows that by this point, by the publication of this book, she also knows many of her readers began reading the Harry Potter stories in their late teens, in early 20s. Okay? And I think she sees something going on in society, which is a lack of manners, a lack of common courtesy. And she wants to start to instill these behavior patterns in her readers. In other words, she's training them. She's teaching them in virtuous behavior. How do I know? What does Hermione say to Harry at the end of book 1 before he goes through the fire, before he drinks the stuff? She says, "You're a great wizard." And Harry's like, "Oh, you're better at book." She doesn't talk about books. She talks about what? 2 virtues: loyalty and friendship. And we saw all throughout that book. Harry showed loyalty and friendship. What else did he show? Defense of the defenseless, standing up for those who are less strong, etc. And he does it then in book 2, and he does it in book 3. Okay? She's training in these virtues. So, Vernon, goodbye then. Harry, see you. Notice, Harry already said goodbye. He doesn't need to say it again. But he does. This is showing us Harry innately has these qualities. If only the Dursleys would pick up on them. In book 5, take that back. Book 6, we're going to see Dumbledore himself teach Dursleys about manners and behavior. Okay? So, he solves the problem with Dudley and his tongue. Harry goes off to the Weasleys. We find out about Fred and George and their, what do we want to call this? Their budding entrepreneurship, their making of magical items and such. Go off to the Portkey. What else do we see? Where's Percy gotten a job? The Ministry of Magic. Who does he work for?
Oh my God.
Yeah, him.
The guy.
Yeah, the guy. Barty Crouch Sr.
Yeah.
Okay? Which we don't find out much about until the end. Barty Crouch, well, I'll just throw this out there. Barty Crouch, prior to this book, prior to several years before, was a very powerful wizard. Very powerful, very high-ranking, very much looked up to. I mean, almost idolized and worshipped. But something happened, which we'll talk about later. So they go off to the Portkey to make their way to the Quidditch World Cup. And they're meeting another family, another man and his son, the Diggories. What do we know prior to this about the Diggories or a Diggory?
He's the only person who beat Harry in a Quidditch match.
Okay, so what position does Cedric play on whose team?
Seeker on the Hufflepuff.
Seeker of Hufflepuff. Joke. How did he beat Harry? Or how did he win?
With kindness and love.
Harry fell. And as Amos says, "Yes, but you didn't fall off, did you?" And I wish he had put in son, so that he'd have that proud, way to go. You beat Harry Potter, Always modest, Our said. Well, why did Harry fall? Had a little reason.
The Dementor.
Yeah, they're only like 100 Dementors down below, pointing their, whatever they are, up at Harry, okay? Why is Cedric not affected by him?
He's been traumatized. over and over again, so the Dementor's gonna be like, oh my gosh, let's go get that guy.
They feed off that, right?
Cedric had an obviously loving father who's taking care of him.
As Lupin says, Harry, you have dark things in your past that others have not experienced. That's why the Dementors affect you so greatly. Okay? Dementors, by the way, if you watch that lecture, or if you didn't watch that lecture, let me put it that way. Dementors are Rowling's, okay, manifestations of depression. She thought of them because she had really bad depression in her mid-20s, shortly after her mom died. Okay? Mom died of cancer when Rowling was 25 or 26. Her mom was only in her early 40s. Mid-40s, I think it was. But she portrays Dementors as like the embodiment of this. How do you get rid of Dementors, by the way? Scientifically also, there's another. Or how do you rid yourself of the effects of Dementors? Chocolate. Why? Anybody know? Scientifically? Why is chocolate good for you?
Doesn't it, I don't know the exact scientifics, but I know it's something to do with like your hormone, it like
Releases a hormone in your brain, dopamine. It's the happy hormone. It's what makes you feel good, okay? Or it's one of them at least, okay? Bagman and Crouch. We get introduced to Ludo Bagman and Barty Crouch Jr., all right? Barty Crouch Sr. I don't want to talk much about that. Other than we also see now, Quidditch World Cup, Chapter 8. They take their seats in the stands. The Malfoys come up. And we see our first description of Malfoy's mom. Okay, we've seen Lucius Malfoy at the end of book 2. He looks like what? Perfectly cast, by the way. Jason Isaacs, perfectly cast in the films. Tall, thin, blonde hair, bluish gray eyes. Draco, tall, thin, blonde hair. Narcissa, slim. It's implied that she's tall, or she says to be tall and slim. Nice looking, if she didn't have a look on her face, and blonde hair. Who are we being introduced to? The Aryan family. I mean, their name might as well be, Mr. and Mrs. Superior Race, Master Race, etc.
Aren't they're related, right? Narcissa and Lucius, aren't they supposed to be?
No,
They're not related?
no, she's related to Sirius.
She's his
And to
cousin.
the Weasleys. And there's a reason for that.
Okay.
All the pureblood families are related.
I'm,
Because you have to keep the pure blood pure. Okay? There's a problem with the whole blood ideology. So, she has a look on her face that suggested there was a nasty smell under her nose. Was that her natural look? Harry's going to make a comment later on to Malfoy about her look. And he's going, oh yeah? Okay. Because Harry's implying that's how she always looks. It could be because of the people she's around. Like, ooh, riffraff. Okay? So, skip the rest of that. We're skipping all the Quidditch World Cup. Why? Because Quidditch ultimately is not important at all. After the Quidditch World Cup, they see this commotion. And Harry and Ron and Hermione and stuff are rushed out of the tents, and they see this group of people wearing hoods, with their wands up in the air, marching like in a phalanx, like a formation square, no edgewise to get in, holding their wands up, and there are 4 figures in the air. And Harry's like, what is that? And Ron says, that's sick, man. That's really sick. Because one of the figures, a woman, we find out this is the Roberts family, the people who are overseeing the campgrounds, etc., for the Quidditch World Cup. She's being turned upside down. Okay, now think about this for a moment. The people are down here. They're looking upward through their mask at these people who are up in the air. She's wearing a dress. You don't need to turn her upside down because everything's exposed. But they turn her upside down so her dress falls down, covering over her head, and we're told she has these voluminous drawers, her underwear, all right? I always ask students this, is she being harmed? No.
Not physically.
Not physically. Is she under mental distress or duress? Yes. Is she under emotional distress? Yes. Because she's feeling shame, okay? So they make their way off to the forest, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and such, and they run into Draco. Draco warns Hermione she should be careful. Why? Because they're at top of 122. They're after muggles. You don't want to be showing off your knickers in midair because if you do, hang around. Harry, Hermione's a witch. Have it your own way, Potter. If you think they can't spot a mudblood, stay where you are. And he uses the term that he used in the second book. Okay? There's a real world corollary of that word. I used to use it in class until a couple years ago. A student got very offended and all hell broke loose. So I no longer use it. That I used it intentionally, pedagogically, good reason. Because when I would use it, some students, not necessarily African American students, more white students than that, their eyes would get big as saucers. And I'd say, thank you. Because that's the effect the word is supposed to have. When a magical person heard that word mudblood, it was so offensive. Okay? Which is why Ron, book 2, goes crazy. Well, Ron goes crazy for 2 reasons. 1, because the word is so offensive. 2, it's Hermione that Malfoy's describing. And that's already, she started to tell us, Ron's got some feelings there for Hermione. Okay? So, he says it again. Harry and Ron don't like it. They go off into the clearing. We're going to skip a bunch. 28, 29. They hear something in the woods. Harry asks twice who's there. And then we hear a deep voice say, Mors Mordra. And something green shoots out of the woods up into the sky. It takes the form of a human skull. Looks like it's made out of green emerald, emerald green stars. And a snake comes out of its mouth. Ron, what the? Harry thinks it's a leprechaun formation. And all of a sudden, the wood around them starts erupting and screams. They haven't seen any other people, really. Malfoy and a couple of others. Harry again calls who's there. Hermione says, let's move. Harry, what's the matter? Why the look on your face?
Harry doesn't study.
No.
Harry's not the only one. Ron doesn't know what it is. Ron grew up in a wizarding family. His father works for the freaking Ministry of Magic. He should know. But Hermione's never found a book she didn't read. 2. It's, whose sign? So, Harry turned. Ron, has to pick up his little Victor Crumb figurine. Bromance there going on. Harry whirled around, and we hear as all these wizards start apparating, with Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the middle of the circle. And when they apparate, how do they land? Are they, picking their nose, scratching their head? They've all got wands out. And in an instant, he registered one fact. Wands out, pointed at he, Ron, and Hermione. And without pausing to think, what is that? What is one of those qualities that Dumbledore said Harry has that Slytherin valued in his followers? Resourcefulness. I think this is an example partly of resourcefulness. Resourcefulness can mean being quick on his feet. Responds very fast. He says, duck. Notice, without pausing to think, he yelled, duck. He seized the other two. He doesn't just duck himself and say, you're on your own. He pulls them down. And we hear stupefied, okay? So we're going to skip a bunch. Who do they find in the woods with a wand? Winky, another house elf. We've already met Winky. Harry met Winky up in the stands. Belongs to Mr. Crouch. Winky looks just like Dobby. Winky tells Harry Dobby's not doing so well because he can't find work, etc. Okay? The wand is the same one that did the Mors Mordra because they make it regurgitate its last spell. Only problem with saying that Winky did it is what? Winky's got a little voice like this. Not a deep voice, okay? What else? If Winky did that spell, well, Winky would have to know the spell. And as Barty Crouch says, if you're suggesting my elf knows this spell, then you're suggesting I taught her this spell. Bottom of 136. Perhaps Amos, Cedric Diggory's father, this probably gives us some reason why he shows so much pride in Cedric, because Amos is kind of a doofus. Perhaps Amos is suggesting that I routinely teach my servants to conjure the dark mark. No, not at all. Notice, he doesn't say Barty, he says Mr. Crouch. What's Mr. Crouch's position now? What job does he do? He handles international wizarding cooperation. He's like a UN diplomat, okay? Crouch says, you have now come very close to accusing the two people in this clearing who are least likely to conjure that mark. That is, of all these 20 witches and wizards, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione, there are two people that are least likely to do this. That means any one of these others, yeah, maybe. Like Arthur, like Amos. Do we know why these two? Well, he says, of course, I suppose you're familiar with the boy's story. Like, you've heard of Harry Potter, right? Yeah. And he says, I trust you remember the many proofs I have given over a long career. We don't know what those proofs are. We're going to hear them later. We're going to see them later. That I despise and detest the dark arts of those who practice them. Yes, of course, Okay? So, the wand is Harry's. Harry claims it is his. He says, I lost it. Winky says, I found it. Okay? Pages 141, 42. They're back with Mr. Weasley, Fred and Bill. Bill and Charlie. 142. Ron asks, I don't get it. It's just a shape in the sky, talking about the dark mark. Mr. Weasley says, Ron, you know who and his followers sent the dark mark into the air whenever they killed. The terror it inspired. You have no idea. You're too young. Now, we've heard that you're too young once before, and it's in Prisoner of Azkaban. It's when Harry asks Lupin, how did you make that Dementor leave on the train? And Lupin starts to talk to him about the Expecto Patronum chart. He says, you're probably too young. He doesn't say he is too young. He says this is very advanced magic. There are many witches and wizards who can't do it, but he's willing to give Harry the shot. We're going to hear several times in this book, you're too young, you wouldn't understand. And at one point, Ron's going to say, I think it's Ron, he's going to say, I'm tired of hearing we're too young. Why don't you try us on for a change? Why don't you tell us what? The truth. Mr. Weasley is saying, he's saying two things. You're too young to remember, you weren't alive then, and they weren't. But he's also saying, you're too young to understand this. Okay? What did Dumbledore say to Harry at the end of the first book? I'll answer your questions. unless I have very good reason not to, but I won't lie. Ron's essentially going to say at one point, I'm tired of people lying to us. Tell us the truth. Okay? We'll stop there and pick up there on Thursday. I'll go ahead and put up today the quiz for Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban. They won't be due till like Friday, so I'll give you several days. Still want to try to finish this on Tuesday of next week.